meeting so that if anyone wants to check the recording right after, they can do that easily. Okay, then, so I'm recording the meeting and I start sharing my screen. Can everybody see my screen? Okay,
Yep,
then.
it's visible.
Then we are ready to start. Well, basically, we are going to do the workshop, or I would say it would be a practical webinar without any explicit practice, but with lots and lots of examples. We're going to take a look at how we can pimp our lessons. Whoever is my age or a little bit older might remember the TV program that they used to broadcast on MTV, Pimp My Ride. So basically, the creators of the competition were inspired by this TV program, basically. So yeah, we are going to hold a webinar for you, and by we, I mean both Marinas. My name is Marina, and I'm the head of methodology in our teacher training center, and I'm also the chief methodologist in SKY operations. And another Marina is going to help me today, my methodologist and DDC workshop expert as well. So we have a couple of rules, well, 5 rules to be precise, for this meeting to be as effective as possible. Do participate. We've planned several well, exercises or several interactions for us so that we can make it a little bit more practical. Thank you for turning on your camera. Switch off your microphone if you're not speaking so that we do not interrupt one another. You might need to make some notes on the go. You will get the materials after the webinar, and of course you will get the recording, but it might be a good idea just to jot something down if you have any ideas so that you don't forget anything on the go. We will be polite and respectful, and we would mind the time just because we have very, very strict agenda and we have only 50 minutes to do the workshop, 50-55, but maybe yeah, we will try to stick to 50. Our agenda for today is directly connected with the checklist that they're going to use to assess your works, your lessons to be precise, and here is what we're going to discuss today. At first, how exactly we assess lesson materials as part of our teaching practice. And we're also going to take a look at how we can improve lesson materials to get our students more involved. The idea is that our lesson consists of not only the materials, but also our performance, and the combination of the two makes up the efficiency, basically, of the lesson. But it might not matter how much you try or how much you try or what you do in a lesson. If the materials are not suitable for your student, your lesson might fail in terms of effectiveness for your student. So basically, we're going to take a look at how exactly we can identify any potential pitfalls, and then we're going to focus on how exactly we can eliminate those pitfalls as well. So I see that we have 13 participants so far, and yep, I'm not sure if anyone else is going to join us today, but why not? Okay. Okay, then. So let's then start. We will have more time for discussion, right? And of course, we will have some time for an open mic. Whenever we are choosing the materials for our lessons, we of course need to assess them somehow. Quite frequently, we do that implicitly without even thinking about, well, why exactly I'm taking those materials, why exactly I'm picking those lessons. But if we think about that for a moment, and if we think about the specific criteria that we keep in mind when choosing the lesson materials, what could there be? In other words, how do you know that the lesson materials that you've chosen for today are going to suit your students' needs and are going to, suit your lesson? You can send your ideas in the chat, or you can you can tell them out loud. We don't have any more participants. Yeah, 14 only. So any ideas how exactly you assess lesson materials?
I think may I start?
Mhm.
Hello, everyone. When choosing materials, I think that the first thing that we have to take into account will be the interest of the students, the level of his language, and the up-to-date materials, I suppose. Yeah, because if we take the old student books, for example, about the DVD recorder or something else that doesn't exist in our lives, I don't think that the student will be as much as involved as he could be.
Exactly. Definitely. As for the materials being up to date, that's a very, very big problem in terms of some old good books that we've been taught by, for example, whenever we were students or school pupils. That's definitely a problem. We do like them, but they are not effective anymore in terms of this criterion. Any more ideas?
You can just put your suggestions in our chat box. Relevance. So there is one more reply, relevance for the students. So materials should be relevant to our students' needs.
Any more ideas? Relevance level.
Interactive. Okay, thank you, Tatiana. Yeah. So there is one more suggestion that our materials should be interactive.
Okay. How interactive should it be, by the way?
There is one more reply. Interesting to do.
Interesting.
Okay, thank you, Helen.
I think it would be connected to the interactivity in the lesson.
So, for example, if you take the reading as an activity, yes, so there have to be some follow-up questions which are somehow related to students' interests, not just answering the true or false questions after reading. And if we talk about dialogues, there has to be some case which is taken from the students' life or work, which we have to role play.
True. Agree totally. I think it would also be connected with the types of mechanics or interactivity that we implement in the lesson. For instance, if you only use the true or false exercises or matching exercises for the whole lesson, it's going to end up being monotonous, and the student is going to lose their interest quite frequently.
All right. There is one more, right? Different mechanics.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're connected, like done by the book. Like, if you do listening, it's pre-listening, while listening, post-listening, and everything is connected. Something like this.
Yeah, here we're talking about the methodological order. Let it be the methodology in general. So all the mechanics, all the procedures must be in methodological sequence that would develop our students' skills. Okay, they must be reliable as well. I cannot agree more. True. Anything else? Up to date, true.
And there has to be some purpose of the materials and the outcome of the activity. So what's the purpose of this activity? Because sometimes the students will ask the question, well, why should I do that or this? Yeah. Why were I doing that exercise? I don't get it.
True, that's an essential thing to remember whenever you're choosing or maybe implementing your own materials in your classrooms. Without having the purposes and outcomes in your lesson materials and making them obvious to your student, even the best materials that that you can possibly find are going to end up boring from your student's point of view. Okay, they must be structured. Right. So basically, these are the main criteria that we can come up with, and we have a couple of additional ones that were prepared by me. And here I can see that we do match in some of the ideas that we brainstormed in terms of optimal challenge, purposes. Again, we match quite nicely. And here you can see that we have a couple of additional criteria that we're going to discuss right now. Here, I think that we haven't touched upon appropriacy to the situation, to the student's age, personality, and level. Level, we have actually discussed that. But in terms of other points mentioned here, what do you think they can be about? And how exactly would they be connected to the efficacy of your materials? You can put your ideas in the chat or share them out loud. No ideas.
It's clear that everything has to be taken into account, like situation level, personality, and age. Yeah, so we cannot take the materials for kids when we talk when we work with students of a different age, or the activities which are supposed to involve more active speaking with introverts could be a little bit hard for them to do. Sometimes it's better to convert into writing, for example, or I don't know, recording yourself here when it comes to homework, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And the situation, actually, I have no ideas. Maybe someone can add something.
Mm-hmm. True. Well, it does seem quite obvious, and it might even be strange that I'm asking such questions and, pay explicit attention to such criteria. But I do remember a situation when we were assessing one of the lessons and when we were giving the feedback to one of the teachers. There was a situation during the warm-up in her lesson, and well, she was teaching an adult student with some, I don't know, usual goals. He was working on his level, and someday he wanted to use English at work, and some general basic needs and goals. And the idea for the warm-up activity was to well, to take a word and then to describe what exactly you do with the words. And the topic was house cleaning. And well, I specifically remember the words that were used in this exercise, for example, broom, scoop, or towel. And the student had to make up the instructions or describe the process, how exactly he could use these items to clean his house. The topic of the lesson was not really connected to this activity. And again, I do see the reason why the teacher wanted to use this activity to have some speaking practice, to implement some vocabulary in a lesson. But again, at the end of the day, it ended up a useless activity, and only the teacher's, charisma helped her save the lesson. But in this case, the exercise was not appropriate to the situation, personality, maybe the age. It could have been a good game for a teenager, or I don't know, a primary student maybe, if they knew the vocabulary, but not an adult student who wanted to improve their level and use English at work. So this is a mistake we should all learn from, and we're also going to have those criteria in mind: relevancy to the student's goals and interests, and relevancy to the student's context. Again, here, what we need to pay attention to is the student's perspective, because you as a teacher will always have your procedures, you will always have your reasons to take this or that activity into your lesson, but it might not be obvious for your student why exactly you're doing some things with them, as Tatiana mentioned. So let us move on and see how all of that works whenever we're assessing our lesson materials. So let's imagine that we have a student, just a student, a general student, an adult one, or maybe a young adult, and you're going to take this lesson with your student. This specific slide, you see the instructions, you see the pictures that the student is supposed to work with. And from your perspective, is this piece of materials good enough for a lesson according to the following criteria? What pitfalls might there be?
So this lesson is obviously about music,
Mhm.
and not everyone is into it. Yeah, so we may not know some of the singers, some of the bands.
Mhm.
Maybe it would be quite challenging for people who are not that like music lovers. And the question is like to guess the singers and music bands. Yeah, to check the answers. I think that it's kind of too simple, and I didn't really get the purpose of the activity.
Mhm.
Maybe
Good.
so it just I think it would be time consuming. So in terms of not enough time, yeah, and effort, yeah, I mean that criteria. So it may take more than 5 minutes, and for the warm up, it would be just a loss of time.
Mhm.
But the task is to guess. I mean, if the student has no idea who's Madonna, yeah, on picture number 4, so we can tell, but definitely teenager or young student can tell
May
us a
not
little
catch.
bit, yeah, a little bit about Lady Gaga, for example. Why not? So it's guessing. So I think it's quite good.
Mhm.
And
True.
from Ainur's perspective, not all people know all these people actually.
True.
It might be a bit perplexing. Okay.
Especially the
Exactly.
person number 6.
Yeah, definitely not all the students can know all these things, but at the same time, if you notice that at least 2 or 3 are known for them, you can develop the conversation further. It could be a sign for you which singers they're interested in, and then you can continue a fruitful discussion afterwards. Yes, they cannot know, I mean, the Queen, but at the same time they can know the Beatles. Yes, and then you can have a further good conversation on that.
Mhm.
Well, the worst thing is they don't know Beatles. I still remember my shock. Yes,
Yep.
and
Could happen.
actually, yes, and actually, it's not the matter of age. I have a student over 40 who I'm sure will tell me she knows none of these people, and some
This
teenagers
is
as
another
well.
thing already. Not everybody is supposed to know the
No.
Beatles, even they are 40
Yes,
or 50.
no, that's why the relevance of this material, right?
Yes,
That's
that's why I'm telling you.
a
Yes,
big problem. Yes.
they cannot know everyone, but they can know a few. And yeah.
The question has to be a little bit different, not the guess the singers, but maybe if you know any of the singers or the bands, could you give some additional information? What do you know about them? Yeah, what kind of music genre do they belong to? So that the question should be different. Or what's your favorite singer from those ones? Yeah, or could you add someone else to that list?
True. Exactly. So even now, even here, you can see that some of the points in a usual piece of materials out of the context, they might not be for everyone. And surely we would never use the same instructions, the same procedures with different students, especially if they're of different age, different background, and different goals. For those who are not music lovers, definitely we would skip this thing, or maybe change the pictures, change the procedures that we do with them, and so on and so forth. So our materials must be flexible. At the same point, let's take a look at the following piece of materials. Oops, sorry.
Oh, I like that.
Yep, simple video. The student is supposed to watch the video, and then maybe you would discuss what's in it. Again, looking at those criteria, is this piece of materials actually good?
So what's the main goal of this activity? Just to watch the video, and what's next? It should be connected somehow to the topic. For example, we can connect it with bad luck and good luck. We have this lesson, or with some funny stories, like retelling something, or to the airport situations, or someone. So there has to be some topic.
Should be storytelling, probably.
Yep. So there must be some additional activities. There must be the context to work with this video. Yep.
Pre-listening, yeah, and post-listening.
Exactly.
And as I have watched this video, and I suppose many of you have watched it too. So Leo is talking about his trip to Russia, and he had some funny, like the guy who was talking to him with a funny Russian accent in English. Yeah, so we can maybe just connect it to the accents. Yeah, so like let's listen to how sometimes we can sound funny, yeah, if we do not work out with the right accent.
True. And then as a follow-up activity, you can have some pronunciation practice.
And it's also good practice for maybe grammar, yeah, so like past tenses here.
True. Exactly. Well, all of that depends on your student, and all of that might be changed completely depending on who you're teaching and what you want to teach them to do. So here it's very important, and it's essential, I would say, to keep a clear teaching purpose in mind. And this teaching purpose will define what you're going to do with all the rest. So it doesn't really matter which types of materials you have. You will always need to adjust them somehow to your students' needs according to those criteria. And basically what we've done just now is very, very good practice. So we've covered some general methodology, and I'm sure that if you've attended the previous workshop, you might remember the points that we were covering right here. By the way, how many of you have watched the recording of this webinar or attended this webinar on Friday 13th? None of you.
Oh, there is 1+ in our chat.
Well,
Thank you, Anu.
at least one person.
Oh,
Two.
okay. So Lily as
Yay.
well. Okay. So one more plus.
Well,
Okay,
then
so
you will find.
Tatiana has failed. Okay.
Yeah, then you will find these materials quite useful as well, because they are also connected to the criteria that our assessors are going to assess your works against, your lessons against. And we always have to remember about the procedures that we're supposed to perform with the text, with the listening, some listening materials, which exercises we have to implement, sequence and grammar practice and vocabulary practice as well. Connecting that to some specific aspects of words that we want to cover in a lesson. You might find those materials in the, I think it was the email, with the materials that Oksana has sent you, but we can clarify this question right after the webinar. So let's then get back, and we're going to go to the next point in our agenda: gamification, games, quizzes, and questionnaires. So I'm sure that all of you have heard this term, gamification, gamifying your lessons, and implementing games in your lessons, so on and so forth, to keep motivation, to boost motivation. In your perspective, what exactly the gamification is about? Because quite frequently we do see that there are some different interpretations of this term. What would it be about from your perspective? You can put your ideas in the chat or voice them
About
over.
making the boring materials much more entertaining for students.
True.
Much more digestible for some reasons.
Yeah, tweaking the material, making it more interactive in some way. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we have any other perspectives? No. Tatiana, you're right.
When it comes to quizzes, yes, everyone is like ready to participate, because everyone like to be a winner, to show some intelligence.
True. Exactly. Well, it's challenging actually to implement because you usually have only one student in your classroom with no one to compete except for the teacher. But yeah, whenever we're talking about gamification in games, we must keep in mind that there are, well, they could be two completely different points whenever it comes to the implementation lesson-wise. Gamification in general is the application of a certain mechanic or a certain game rule that are usually used in games. So you can, of course, implement some games as they are, or you can implement some mechanics. What gamification mechanics have you already heard of in your practice? Maybe not connected to the ELT methodology in general, but learning in general.
So Kahoot, which is one of the most popular services right now, which can be used for group learning, for example. Different quizzes, like flashcard quizzes, yeah, so different platforms. But when it comes to Vimbox, yeah, for example, we have the timer, and the student, for example, can has to answer many questions in 1 minute, yeah, and have to be as much creative as he can do. He can be.
True. Well, you actually named a couple of them, and when it comes to mechanics, you can see that they might be implemented not only in games specifically, but also in learning and in some other areas of knowledge as well. So whenever we are talking about gamification mechanics, the easiest ones and the first ones that leap in our minds are rewards and competitions. So it's very easy to implement in your lesson, especially if you do some, I don't know, role plays, or if you're working again on Wimbox, you're going to maybe implement some leaderboards and compare, for example, the students' progress to yesterday's progress, or maybe compare different skills of your students. Time pressure works, consequences work. For example, if your student completes the exercise without any mistakes, or making just a few mistakes, they're going to get some prize, right? Or they're not going to get any prize, which could be, I don't know, less homework, more homework, whatever they like to do, or maybe some favorite activity of theirs, if they, for example, make mistakes or don't make mistakes. Well, that works quite easily, and you don't have to make up, your personalized lessons per se if you implement just a couple of gamification mechanics. Rare content, unlockable content, quests, progression, if we're talking about measuring the progress, also works whenever we are looking at our lessons and we're trying to make them a little bit more interactive. All of that might be summarized as adding the interactivity into your lessons. Marina, do you want to add anything to our discussion?
Actually, we can proceed with the following, right? Because we've just actually discussed all the distinguishing features between gamifications and games as well. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. And here is like an example of gamification in speaking practice. Maybe you do want, I would say, to add anything else except for, here suggested variants like role plays or quests or board games. Or also you can proceed with one more game, like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, with your student while, practicing speaking. So also it's some sort of gamification. Instead of just providing your students with follow-up questions, you can just do it in a more interactive way, I'd say. Okay, and here are some examples. So maybe you'd like to add anything else, right, concerning speaking practice.
Yep. So here are some examples. So we can put all our questions for the speaking exercise in a board, so that we would kind of create a board game for our student, or we would create some tables or different variations of board games. Well, all of that works quite nicely, but of course we do need to remember about the thing that we have just discussed right here, situation appropriacy, age appropriacy, and personality, person appropriacy, we would call that. In this way. So if your student is okay with playing games, then fine. If your student is, kind of too serious to do all that, it wouldn't be a good idea. And we would take a look at some other mechanics that we can see here. By the way, we do know that a lot of teachers like to play games, especially two truth, one lie, or I don't know, 3 truth, 1 lie, or something like that.
Or lie detector, actually.
Yeah, like many truth, 1 lie. Yeah, during their first lessons, the point about using gamification mechanics whenever you're not really, in good relationships with your student, in close relationships with your student, it might be a little bit too early to implement any gamification. So we would do that when our student is, when our student feels relaxed in a lesson and your student, for example, trusts you, but it's not a very good idea for your first lessons per se. Okay, then, so we're going to move forward, and Tatiana has already mentioned Kahoot, which is a very, very interesting idea. Again, my mirror is moving. Yep, it's a very interesting idea to implement in your lessons, especially if you have group lessons. With individual lessons, that could work as well. Maybe Tatiana would share her experience using that. Have you used it in your lessons?
Yeah, I've tried once, but it wasn't a group lesson. It was one-to-one lesson. Yeah, and my student, she is 26 years old, and she was so excited as if she was a kid. We were playing a grammar game. I suppose some quite difference between present perfect and past simple, and she has to guess as many grammatical structures which which go to that for this tense. And what she liked most about that activity that I took it at the end of the lesson when she was almost exhausted, almost tired after studying some theory, and it was kind of relaxing activity for her. And she said, "Yeah, why we haven't taken it earlier?" So,
True.
Kahoot is quite easy to use service. Yeah, so it's I'm not sure if it's absolutely free, but there is kind of a basic version, I suppose, that everyone can use. And the interface is also quite friendly. So you should just create a link and send it to the student, and he or she can open it in 2 seconds. So you don't even have to download the application, I suppose, just open it in the browser.
Sure, very easy to use. Thank you for your experience. Does anyone else wants to share their experience using the gamification apps in their classrooms?
Just have a question to Tatiana. Excuse me. How are you carrying out it technically at the lesson, during the lesson?
Technically, yes. So we have to have the smartphone in our hands and just to look at the smartphone screen. So it's like happening as if I'm sitting next to the student. So, or you can share the screen, or the student can share his screen when if he or she is opening it in the browser, and then I can see the results immediately.
I see. So it's really handy. It's really useful.
Yeah, I think so.
It's really handy. I mean, for using at the lesson.
Yeah, from time to time. Yeah, why not?
Thank you.
As I said, for releasing the stress, for example, yeah, or for just changing the activities into some grammar practice, it's more fun.
I see. Thanks.
Thank you for your question. I think it's a very good comment that, well, it might be better to use such gamification apps or maybe some ways to add interactivity if you have a monotonous lesson. For example, I don't know, get ready for exam, or I don't know, some revise and check tests or whatever that your student is, whenever your student is supposed to do some strenuous tasks monotonously, and then at the end of the lesson, you can add some fun so that your student would lift up their mood at the end. and yeah, to make it a little bit more interactive. Well, you can also use book widgets or GimKit or maybe some other gamification apps that you know. There are plenty of them. I know another one, but I forgot its name. Quizlet. Yep. You can also use Quizlet, and all that proves to be working. But again, do remember about situation appropriacy. You would probably not implement all that if you have a full interactive lesson on the platform, when you have a lot of different tasks already, and adding something else would be a little bit too much. Okay. Well, then let's move on, and we're going to speed up a little bit. We are going to move to new formats of input and output. Again, we've discussed that during our previous lesson when we were looking at the concept of CLIL and more than English. And what we were focusing at was the connection of lesson materials to the real world. So again, of course, we do need to implement some solely teaching exercises, some procedures that would scaffold the real life tasks and prepare our students to implement some very specific linguistic points. And whenever you're narrowing all of that down, it's very difficult to find some authentic tasks that would be easy for your student to do, for example. But whenever we're summarizing all the things that our student has done, we might need to implement a task that would be connected to the real world, both in terms of output and in terms of input. What we mean by input and output, well, input would be anything that your student reads or listens to or watches, for example, if it's a video, any information that they receive. Here we have examples from our previous workshop, and maybe you could add something else. Please put your ideas in the chat. You can take, or maybe you can shape up your texts in a form of something that you take from Instagram. It could be a vlog, it could be a webinar, podcast, TED Talks, maybe some materials from local communities. All of that would help your students see that, well, this material that I have here in my lesson is very similar to whatever I'm going to interact with outside of my lesson. And this in and of itself is going to boost the motivation and boost the interest of your student to whatever they're going to work with. Songs, why not? It's not always legal, actually, but there's an idea.
TED Talks also good to implement. There is one more suggestion from Kate.
Yep. Anything else?
Episodes from the TV series or movies.
Yeah. Could be a trailer. We're not going to watch the whole episode in the lesson, but a trailer, why not?
Yeah, BBC News, actually. Maybe also different blogs like Tumblr.
Yep, we have blogs. Let's add blogs.
Newspaper articles.
Some would say that people don't read newspapers anymore, but I do have a local newspaper in my kitchen that I buy every week.
What about the Guardians, for instance, right?
Yeah, online newspapers, why not? True. Okay, well, all of that represents new formats of input that we are supposed to implement in our lessons in some way. We, of course, should not base all of our lessons on Instagram posts, but we do need to show that the materials that we have in our classrooms are connected to that.
May I also add some great resource. It's called Question and Answers, if I'm not mistaken, and Quora. Quora. And sometimes the native speakers, they give really great answers, and you can learn so much great language from there. Yes, so that there is like the reading the whole block, from the answers.
True. Yep. Thank Thank you for your suggestion. Whoever has never heard about Quora, definitely check that. It's going to help you get some inspiration whenever you're preparing for your lessons, or maybe looking for something to replace lesson materials with on the platform. Okay, then, well, let's move to the next part of our webinar, and these are going to be new formats of output, which is about which is about the tasks that our students are supposed to do whenever they're doing some productive activities. Here again, we have some examples from the previous workshop that are going to be quite handy whenever you're trying to boost your lesson and trying to replace a traditional, well, record your 2-minute monologue and that kind of stuff tasks. Those things are going to show that whatever your student is producing during your lesson is directly connected again to the real world and is actually quite practical. So instead of having a student preparing a 2-minute monologue about some random questions that are not directly connected, you could at first change the question so that they would be connected to one another, and then give the context. Prepare a TED talk or prepare a presentation, or I don't know, imagine that you're trying to teach me a new concept. I'm your friend and you're just so passionate about that, so tell me about that. All of that is going to spark your lesson a little bit. And again, for your practice, for your inspiration, let's brainstorm a couple of more examples of such formats of outputs, speaking or writing tasks, communicative tasks that you can implement in your lessons. Again, you can put your ideas in the chat or voice them over.
About asking questions to your teacher. I usually do this. I say, attack me with a question, and they attack me with like 10 questions, because for some reason it's hard for them. And they don't usually do that. We ask questions, right? They don't. And I ask them to ask me questions.
True. Exactly. Quite frequently, they have no skills developed in this way. Okay. Good suggestion. Anything else?
Prepare a speech for elections. Okay.
Okay.
Some debates, maybe even some debates like this.
Might not be elections per se, but something where some situation whenever you need to be very, very persuasive. That's a good idea. I like that. Anything else?
Yeah, don't be inhibited. Every idea is going to be appreciated. So,
what about voice messages?
already put it, no? Audio, video messages, yeah, voice messages. Yeah, and there is a fantastic tool to be used like Vecaro. I don't know if you've heard about it, never you've used it.
Yep.
Yeah, here a bit below. Yeah, Vecaro. So actually, it might be used and implemented, and it's user-friendly, and it allows users to record, send, and download voice messengers, right? And you can use it whenever you want for digital storytelling, broadcasting, and maybe even giving feedback to the student.
True. Okay. Do I have any writing any reviews here? Oh, we do. Yeah, writing a review. Again, instead of giving your student a typical writing task, or a task to write an essay, you can give them a little bit more context, and you can give them a task to shape up their output as a review, a critic review for some website, for example, Russian Tomatoes, or whatever website they can that leaps into their mind. So all of those are the things that we do in our real life. For example, I make presentations. So for example, for me, a very relevant task in my English lesson, or whatever language we're talking about would be preparing a TED talk or preparing a presentation. All of us, I think, share voice messages in WhatsApp or Telegram, and that as well as a form of input would also help your student feel a little bit more connected to the real world. Okay, then, so if we don't have anything to add, we are going to move to practice. So we've talked about the forms of input and output that could be tweaked to make your lessons better. Let's practice right now. So here you can see a random piece of materials in which your student is supposed to listen to 5 conversations and match their numbers to the pictures. Any idea how you can make this task a little bit more interactive, a little bit more connected to the real life? Bearing in mind that you have no idea what the audios are about, but in terms of mechanics, in terms of the format, what can you do to this piece of material?
Write the captures to the picture, first of all, as it was in the previous.
True.
Or maybe to guess how the pictures are interconnected.
Yep.
If they are taken from one story. We have here 5 stories.
Talking about stories, why not to make it base for storytelling?
So one action leads to next one, just to make up a story.
Yeah.
Including all these pictures
Comment
and narrate the story. Okay.
Yeah, narrating a story, a good idea.
Or we might practice asking questions, but not the teacher asks, but the student asks. Ask me what is happening in the pictures. If, for example, if we are learning to ask questions correctly, and maybe even in different tense aspects, and grammar tenses.
True.
Or maybe what life situations do they correspond to? Where can we meet situations in life?
Exactly like that. Okay.
Maybe I've misheard, but what about writing captions?
Yeah, I've
yeah, okay. I've just misheard. Okay.
True. Writing captions could work. Yep.
If we talk about the emotions, maybe we can somehow connect it to some of the idioms which were previously learned. Yeah, and try to use them by describing those pictures first of all. And then you could hear that idioms in the listening, maybe. Like pre-listening activity.
Yep.
Also, we can give like a situation. We can ask our student to imagine that he or she sees the photos on Instagram, and we can ask, for example, who could share these photos and where they are, what is happening. Just like the same to describe what it is. Yeah, just like a bit more than content.
True. Love that idea, and I love the idea in the chat. You're a policeman who is
Yeah,
interrogating
it might be done
people
in
in
the
the
form of
picture you choose.
interrogation. Yeah.
Well, why not? if you're actually a policeman, or if you're teaching a policeman. Cool. Well, there are lots of ways to go around such tasks. In terms of the procedures, this is the task that would check the student's ability to guess the environment in which the dialogue is taking place, and you can even replace the audio itself, but keep the level, keep the difficulty, keep the topic, and maybe change it to something that you can find over the Instagram or whatever piece of material you can find useful. Okay, let's take a look at another piece of materials. Well, this is what you can find in lots of worksheets and lots of lessons, some topic and some random sequence of questions that your student is supposed to answer. How can you make this task a little bit more engaging, interactive, and motivating to do?
You know, when we talk about these some random pictures which are not anyhow connected to the teacher or to the students, yeah, of course, it's not that interesting to discuss them. But if you attach your own family pictures or maybe the personality results from your own test, yeah, so and maybe you can discuss them, yeah, so the students usually are becoming much more engaged in that activity, yeah, and as the outcome, we can also ask them to talk about their families next lesson. So we like practicing first, yeah, talking about my family, let's say, yeah, if I attach my photo, and then the next lesson they should do the same thing.
True, that could work. It's a good idea, especially if we're talking about families. Yeah.
And as I see, some of the questions, like half of them is like general questions. So do you have brothers and sisters? So yes, I do. So the questions are not that they're not given that much information as we want to learn.
Sure.
Yeah.
Just yes, no, and it's it's not going to provide any speaking practice. True.
Also, if our students are interested, they are fans of some series, for example, we can ask them about some personalities, some characters, especially if our student, for example, is the only one child, yeah, or don't have any wives, husbands, children, whatever. It can be good.
True. True. We can discuss some episodes from a TV series we've both watched, and connected to the topic of families. Okay.
Maybe to provide even some debates, whether it's good to be an optimist or a pessimist, what are like pros and cons, I don't know, like some debates regarding all this.
True.
I mean, except for do you have brothers? This is just some, like, I would say, some not that obvious, I would say, questions.
Yep. Or if you could choose, who would you choose to have a brother or a sister, and why?
Yep.
Or how did your family structure influence your personality? Maybe this. I don't know.
Family position.
We'll connecting all that to the student's perspective. Right. We can also change the questions here again, keeping the target language, and ask a student to record a voice message, for example. So you as a teacher would be role playing the recipient of this message. Or, for example, we can implement some interviewing during the lesson, so that your student would be asking questions, then you would be asking questions to your student. You can implement some storytelling. Your student can write some blog on this topic, and that's going to provide a little bit more practice than just answering and asking questions, which is good. Again, it's a skill and it's speaking practice, but it's not developing any other skills and sub skills we want our students to develop.
Maybe even video blogging. We can ask our student to provide us with a video about his family, just like quite a short one. I don't know.
Yep. Or some imaginative family they don't want to share.
Maybe, yeah.
Well, that depends on the topic for sure. Family is just a random choice. Okay, right. So here we're going to wrap it up, I think. And as for the summary of the meeting, this was a sort of a reviewing webinar about what you can do to make your lessons effective. Do remember about the criteria that you're going to assess the lesson materials against. Your lesson materials are supposed to fall under all these criteria quite nicely so that we can say that they are effective. You can also check the following link about universal design for learning criteria. I'm going to send them in the chat, and they are going to be included in the post-webinar email. Right, they are, well, a little bit too general for our context, but still they're worth checking. And do remember about the gamification mechanics that you can implement in all your lessons. Do remember about the gamification apps that might be nice to use whenever you have some monotonous tests, or whenever you do some test preparation or exam preparation, when the student is okay in terms of their progress, but they want some more interactivity in their class. And of course, do remember about new formats of input and output that must be connected with the students' context just asking questions about, you know, your family or something like that might be a little bit too old-fashioned, because if you have some students who do have some learning backgrounds, they have been asked such questions many times already. If you change this format of output, you're going to help your student a lot in this case. Okay, well, we are going to wrap it up. If you have any final questions before we move on to our lessons and meetings right after our webinar, let's discuss them now. If not, then I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Thank you very much for the seminar. I have a kind of technical question. Is this seminar counted for our monthly seminars that we have to attend?
Are you from premium department?
Yep.
Nope.
Yep, it's
Nope.
counted.
Nope.
No? Why not?
This is solely for STA. So we should probably check that with the with your group manager. But as far as I know, no.
Okay.
Well, we should discuss that with the manager, I think.
Okay.
So yeah, it's only for STA. Okay, any more questions? How to use Miro? Okay. I think that there was a webinar from premium methodologists about how to use Miro. I think that we can find that. If not, we can surely record something like that. Why not? Okay, then. Well, thank you for your idea. I do know that in a couple of minutes, some of you will need to run to your lessons, so I'm going to let you go now. Stop sharing my screen and wishing you good luck, wishing you to spend your weekend in the best possible way. Enjoy the weather, stay safe, and then see you around somewhere. Bye-bye then.
Thank you so much for coming.